there's a dude standing in the background whispering to his friend, "Don't you ever bring me to improv night ever again."
I know.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everybody out there for voting on our classic movies to review. You vote for them, you give us subscriptions for them, and we give you 4 every week, and you pick one. And this week, you picked a very interesting one to talk about because, you know, all these movies are on the American Film Institute's 100 best movies of all time in the last 100 years. But of course, times change and people feel like they're obligated to say they're the best movies because some organization out there told them to say that because, you know, they sound official and shit. So it's interesting to go through and seeing, have these things really maintained their classic feel or that title of being a masterpiece, best movie of all time? Or can we come in and tell you the truth because, you know, we ain't like those other critics out there that are brainwashed into believing whatever they're told by an institute? Well, that's where we're coming in with this one. And tonight's movie that we're talking about is directed by some people. Oh, he's gone beyond great filmmaker. He's gone beyond auteur. This man, they say, is a genius. Stanley Kubrick. Hey, hands down, without any kind of argument, one of the most respected filmmakers of our times. He has directed so many movies in so many different genres. Some of those are considered genres that, you know, you mention those today, that's kid stuff. That's stuff to make money with. That's not real cinema. That's not real art. But somehow he made it that. This man has done drama, sci-fi, horror, historical epics, war films. But what has always set him apart, I believe, no matter what genre he's working in, even when it's seen as sort of a more entertainment type genre like sci-fi and horror, what always set him apart, Martin, is that this man, his movies always had a statement. They made a statement about the period of the time that they were made in. Something about the human condition, some social statements, some social movement that was going on. He was always putting something that was more intelligent and cerebral in there, no matter what genre he was working in. And that brings us to the war genre right here. You know, he did Full Metal Jacket. You seen Full Metal Jacket?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love Full Metal Jacket, man. Amazing.
Yeah, me too.
Film.
Especially the first half.
Yeah, man. Amazing film. But before Full Metal Jacket, there was his Cold War, and some people say masterpiece today, Dr. Strangelove. If you want to go by the long title, Dr. Strangelove, or how I stopped worrying about, I don't even know what it is. What is
I stopped worrying and learned to love the bomb.
How I stopped worrying and learned to love the bomb.
I don't like the look of this, Fred.
And you looking at the wrong thing. I think what you're looking at is just fine.
I was the only one in authority to order the use of nuclear weapons.
Okay, Corey, this ain't telling me a goddamn thing. Yeah, I don't know what the hell is going on. People talking about politics, blowing up shit, shooting at people. There's war going on. What the hell is going on with this movie? The trailer can't tell me shit. So what is this movie about? Well, you know what? In the trailer, you got kind of a hint of what the story is. So it's actually pretty simple. It gives a scenario of what if outside of the president, someone else had access to military codes to launch a nuclear strike, and in doing so, jeopardize all life on the planet Earth, and basically just kill everything. For example, what if maybe some, I don't know, crazy ass military leader was able to get it, and also had
or some orange president,
or some orange president that we have right now, or Trump. Let's just get right down to it. That's why people are so worried about this fool we got in office right now. You know, what if what if it falls in the wrong hands? Because, hey, we're all human and no one's perfect. In fact, some of us are pretty crazy. So what if it falls into the hands of somebody who's a crazy conspiracy theorist, but is also a military leader and has access to things that the regular person doesn't, and then causes World War III, which again is the end of all life on Earth? That's what the question asks, and it does it in a very satirical tone. Now, with this film here, before we get into any kind of the deep subject matter, a lot of people are looking at these movies because more and more people are doing this today. Listen, there's the film purists out there, there's the cinephiles, there's the people that love movies, and then there's the average film goer that will look at something such as, I don't know, Citizen Kane and be like, okay, I don't get it. What's the big deal? And I think that this movie that we're talking about right now, Stanley Kubrick, kind of falls into that Citizen Kane category. Again, don't get me wrong. Just wait and hear what I have to say about it. I'm not saying it's a good movie. I'm not saying it's a terrible movie. Excuse me. I'm not saying it's a great movie. I'm not saying it's an awful movie. What I'm saying is that I think for anybody who looks at this today and they don't have a certain subtext to go with it, they'll probably come in and be like, okay, not only do I not get what's going on with this and why this movie is considered a classic, but this movie's pretty goofy too. I don't know what's going on. And I completely understand if anybody says that. Because on its own, if you walk into it completely cold, and know nothing about it, on its own, I don't think that this movie is as good today as when it was released. You got to come in with like a college course or a history lesson, or you got to come in with some knowledge of where this movie stood out and what its relevance was at the time. This movie right here, it has its place as one of the greatest movies of all time. I forgot what place it was on the American Film Institute's list, but this movie, one of the reasons why this movie is considered to be so great is because at the time it was released, it was so controversial. This was criticized for being, at the time, it was criticized by people, by critics out there, and especially people on the political spectrum, where they were saying that this movie right here, man, this ain't nothing but Soviet propaganda. This is something that's trying to get us to, it's telling us to be fair with those Ruskies out there, those red invaders coming through. You got to keep in mind that this was made at a time when the Red Scare was reaching fever level, man. If y'all, you talk about a history lesson, look at the McCarthy hearings and look at all the people that were put out of a job because they thought that, these people were sympathetic to communists and sympathetic to Russia. So this movie right here, where they even tried to give a slight fair shake or fair look at Russia, it was criticized for that. Also,
right, and the fair shake they were given is that, okay, the Russians are as up as we are, or rather vice versa. We're as up as the Russians are. And it's like, why would you say something like that? That's un-American.
Yeah. Yeah. If you gave them just an ounce of the benefit of the doubt, you were seen as a communist sympathizer, a Russian sympathizer.
And also, it was 1964, so they were fresh off the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, yeah. Kennedy. See, that's another thing with this, man. People, they went crazy about this film because they say, man, we're talking about nuclear annihilation. We're talking about communist infiltration, and you playing with this shit.
Right. You're making fun of something that actually almost happened.
Yeah, you making fun of this, people. We scared of Russia. We scared of nuclear annihilation, and you think that shit is funny? Satirical, my ass. This shit ain't funny. Ain't nobody laughing about this. Don't nobody find this shit funny. Satirical. I don't even know what that means right now. Take that satire somewhere else.
That would be like somebody right now coming out with a comedy about coronavirus.
Yes. The government was coming out and telling people, they were looking at your boy, Stanley Kubrick. They like, man, what you trying to do? Scaring all these people out here. Man, look, listen, they had to come out, and the government had to come out and like, don't listen. This is a goddamn liberal elite Hollywood director. Don't listen to him.
Yeah, there's a bunch of lies. None of this could ever happen. Everything is safe and secure. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it was not.
No, Dwight. At the time that they like, man, this fool is lying. Hey, everything is A-OK. You know USA got your ass. Everything is foolproof, man. Nothing will happen. You guys are fully protected. This system,
they were the fools, and that was the proof.
We got us. Yeah, exactly. Hey, we got a system. But
we got a system. They ain't had no goddamn system.
They ain't had no goddamn system. At the time when this was made, or soon after, Dwight Eisenhower, in the administration of Dwight Eisenhower and Kennedy, during that time, both of them had given, the administration had given permission to the Navy and the military to, just in case, hey, just in case I'm the president.
Yeah, the president's in the shower and can't get to the phone.
The president's taking a shit.
You can go ahead and launch the missiles.
Yeah. If the president's taking a shit or he's asleep or he's around or something, if we're being invaded, somebody got to call the shots. So, hey, you know what? We got to give it to some military leaders because they're best suited to do it, unless they're insane. So we were kind of in that situation, and the military didn't like this movie because it was scaring people, even though their system was flawed as hell, man. There's another thing in here outside of the politics why this movie was so popular also, because the movie was always taking a nudge and a wink at sexual innuendo.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. Now, this is 1964 when this movie came out. And they had so much sexual innuendo in here. For us today, it'd be like, well, shit, that ain't nothing. Kids are watching goddamn porn on the internet. But back in the day, to even insinuate any kind of sexual context, that was very risque. And the movie is full of it. One of the most popular, no, this is, not one, but this is the most popular iconic scene from the film. Where you have, I started to say step and fetch it. Was it Slim Pickens?
Slim Pickens.
Slim Pickens. Slim Pickens plays a pilot, a major in this movie, and one of the most popular and discussed scenes in this movie is him riding a missile. Riding a missile, getting his redneck on, just screaming and hollering on his way to nuclear Armageddon. God damn.
Hey, that's a long way to fall.
Like he's screaming like he's watching somebody fuck a pig. Where's the sexual innuendo here? It's just a redneck riding a bomb to his death. You got to go and look at a lot of things with this, man, because this is something I knew, because this is a scene that's so talked about that this even if you haven't seen the movie. This right here, it's not to represent comedy or anything. It's to represent sexual repression, man. Yeah. A lot of sexual repression comes through in this movie, and especially right there. So get this, Slim Pickens, his name is Major King Kong in the film. Why? Because he's got a King Kong-sized dick. That's a fucking phallic symbol right there.
Yeah.
That's him. This is a guy that has a big ass dick. He whipped it around for everybody, and he's extremely proud of this. It's like a redneck just walking to a bar, pull his dick out, and talking, yeah, look at my dick. This is what this is. The equivalent of that, man. And like I said, anybody who knows a little bit about this movie knows about that. There's a lot of sexual nods, winks, and innuendo in here. Mainly in scenes with this character here. This is Sterling Hayden as Major Jack Ripper. And this dude is always talking about fluids. The commies are corrupting our fluids. Peter Sellers like, all right, man, you talking about these goddamn fluids. How did you even get to this? And his explanation is from sexual encounters.
I first became aware of it, Mandrake, during the physical act of love. Luckily, I was able to interpret these feelings correctly.
What the Peter Sellers like, what the I'm sorry I asked. Right? That's the insane military leader that causes this whole mess because he's crazy. But listen to what he says here. There's an important follow-up to this.
Women sense my power, and they seek the life essence. I do not avoid women, Mandrake. Yeah. I do deny them my essence.
So he's pretty much saying, ain't no woman gonna take my manhood And I'd be goddamn if another man takes my manhood, aka he's the Russians, but what he really means is another man. You know, it's because the reason why I say that is because he's like saying no woman's gonna take my essence, and for damn sure no other man's gonna take it, Russian or not, unless it's the right man. Because you start to look at this, you start to think, shit, is the sexual repression in this movie even alluding to homosexuality?
It's always bordering on it.
It is. There's a moment here that he has with Peter Sellers where this whole talk about fluids, it reaches almost a very homoerotic level.
70% of you is water. Fresh, pure water to replenish our precious bodily fluids.
He's like, I just want to get out of here. He's like, look, man, you see the hands? Peter Sellers is so great in this scene. Those hands, he's just kind of like, I just want to get the out of here, man. They are the greatest comedy duo in here, man. Because he's got this one dude who don't want to be here. You got this other crazy who wants to him. People, there is
how can I keep this conversation light and not get into what I know he wants to get to?
He's like, man, just say you want to me. Shit, I ain't got no choice. You lock the door. Let's just get it over with. You look at the movie, you even start to wonder, like, nobody's ever talked about this scene. And the movie made me paranoid. There's a scene where the dude uses the word come. And I'm just thinking, I don't even know anymore. Is this some homoerotic innuendo, or is it just regular dialogue? I can't tell.
The enemy may come individually, or he may come in strength. He may even come in the uniform of our own troops.
You know, after some of the scenes you see this character with, you're wondering, okay, because as a credit to the film, they do satire like satire should be done.
There are some slapsticky or, sight gaggy moments in here. Not a lot.
For the most part, that kind of confusion is not bad. That kind of confusion is good. It's like, okay, I can't tell what's real anymore, what isn't, because they're doing such a good job at doing satire very straight. But, all this sexual innuendo, what it's leading up to, it's just not there just to, for laughs and giggles and whatnot. I mean, some of it is, definitely. But, a lot of it is to give this message about the nature of war, the nature of politics that starts wars. That's kind of why it's relevant today, because, that's why people say, maybe we should get a woman to be president, because guys just do wars as dick measuring contests.
I'll go you one better, man. I mean, if you look at it, you go like, well, that's Cold War and it's not relevant. Here's why it's relevant. Because you got a bunch of, military guys, especially politicians, who are talking about collateral damage and deaths of human beings casually, like they're playing on a chessboard. And what we have right now with people like, all right, some people are going to die from this disease, but we got to get the economy going again.
Yeah. Thing is,
without taking into account like what that actually means on the ground. Yeah,
what this movie shows is that politicians and politics have always been about playing with people's lives. It's not just the corona. I don't want to get into any real politics right here, but man, we've sent people to die to the Gulf War, not to go, but to invade Iraq when they had nothing to do with 9/11. People are used to playing with the lives of people. Over power, over dick measuring contests, and that's what this movie is talking about. This movie is really relevant in its attack and its satire of politics, and when it comes to the lives that are going to be lost in the middle of it. The movie says that these people, with all their machismo, all their posturing, they're about to let all their insecurities kill us all, and they've been killing us, and even in scenes of sexual prowess. Like you see right here, that's George C. Scott. I got the actress's name, Tracy, but she's hot as man.
Yeah, she is.
Tracy, I forgot her last name. The chat might be able to help me out. But this is George C. Scott as General Buck Turgidson.
Yeah.
And he's an example of all these guys with all this power, all this authority, all this bravado, getting mistresses on the side. And all it is that when it comes down to it, it's just men are just slaves to their dick. You know, that's all. Like this dude right here, this is he's in the war room. They're in the middle of nuclear Armageddon. And he takes a call and he's just as pussy whooped as hell.
Well, look, baby, I can't talk to you now, but my president needs me.
You see this dude over here, he looking at him like, damn, you a bitch. He say, everybody hears you.
Yeah. Yeah, we can hear you. Just get off the goddamn phone.
Ain't nobody looking at you because everybody's embarrassed for your stupid ass. He's one of the performances that is pretty much just mugging, man. It's a little over the top and it's mugging, but he was one of my favorite guys to watch in this.
Same here.
He's the guy in that it used to be a meme a long time ago. He's looking at his daughter in a porn film in this movie. He's like, make it stop.
Hardcore.
Hardcore. Cut it off. Cut it off. But, you know, in this, you get to see the comical side of George C. Scott, man. Under any other director, it wouldn't go over as well. But in this movie, he's directed well enough to where it's not as over the top as it could be. And they give him some great business to do. There's a scene where he just keeps chewing pieces of gum, one stick after another in the same shot.
That's right, sir. You are the only person authorized to do so. And
he does that 5 more times in one scene. Just chewing, like he's addicted to it. Like he's nervous and he just keeps chewing gum. Stanley Kubrick gives these people such good side pieces of business to do in the film. And he's one of the great guys in there, man. I got some major criticism of this movie, man. This is directed by Stanley Kubrick. You know, a lot of people think like this is a movie that should not be criticized now.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, you'll talk to some people who'll be like, well, it's a masterpiece. It's done by the genius Stanley Kubrick. You can't say anything bad about this movie. It's on a list. And I'm like, nah, that's bullshit. No, you can talk about this movie all day with some things in here. But I have to say, you know, this movie has appealed to something that I like. And that is that I think the reason why this movie has really endured is because I always say this, man, if a movie leaves you talking about it, it doesn't tell you everything. You walk away trying to figure out what was that subtext there? What did that ending mean? What did that character stand for? Then you have a movie that has more lasting power, more of a shelf life than just watching it in the theater or watching it on a screen at some point and walking away from it. And that is one of the main reasons why this movie has endured, I think, is because to this day, there are discussions about this film and what it means. You mentioned this, Martin, Peter Sellers in this. Peter Sellers, he plays 3 different characters in this film. And you know what? And I think that Peter Sellers is amazing. And I'm bringing him up in his performance. First, let me talk about his performance. Peter Sellers, acting genius. This guy, he was a chameleon. He took on so many different roles, did so many different things in his movies. And one of his requirements was, I just need to play something completely different you hadn't seen before. But in this, I love the characters he played, except for one.
I know, same here.
The title character.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, he was too much.
That character's way too much. He's in the movie, he's an ex-Nazi weapons developer for the United States. And I found this character to be way over the fucking top. I just like, whatever y'all saw back then, I ain't seeing it now. He's supposed to be, since he's an ex-Nazi, he's supposed to have this German accent, but he sounds like a Muppet. And they give him this mechanical arm that I swear to God that Peter Sellers was just improvising. And he was. He has a glove on one hand. And it was said that Stanley Kubrick, he was using gloves to work some of the hot lights on the set and whatnot. And Peter Sellers says, oh, you got a glove. I can work that into my routine. And so he put it in here and made himself a character with this mechanical arm. And I'm sorry, y'all, this character got on my nerves. It's like watching a comedian just bomb on stage. So he resorts to just doing a bunch of dumb shit. There's a dude standing in the background whispering to his friend, don't you ever bring me to improv night ever again. I know. Where's the joke? What's going on?
He's playing like a character in a skit on the Carol Burnett show. Seriously,
if you watch this, and I'm sorry, people are gonna say, "Hey, look, you know, you're not supposed to criticize this. It's the main character. It's Peter Sellers. It's Stanley Kubrick. Fuck it. This was a bad character to me, man. It really is like watching somebody doing improv and nothing's working. So they just start doing a bunch of random, crazy, dumb shit. And I didn't think it was good, man.
Well, it to me, it reminds me of when somebody is a legend of comedy and they come out and they start doing a routine and it's not funny, but people still laugh and applaud almost out of appreciation, out of homage rather than because it actually is good.
Yeah. You know, it's a guy, his whole thing about being German is to talk like this, talk like fucking Yoda and shit. I mean, it's a Muppet. It's a Muppet character. And all this biting on his hand and shit. I mean, look, I'm sure back in the day, Martin, people looking at, you know, it's Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
Back in the day, people looking at him doing.
Oh, he's so crazy.
Yeah, they would. He's the equivalent of Will Ferrell in that scene. You know, just improvise.
I've seen Jim Carrey do that at times. Be doing an interview and just kind of busting the characters and doing silly shit, and the audience is just loving it because it's Jim Carrey. But I was like, this is really not that funny.
Well, I can also tell you this. I say that right now, unless, again, you're willing to have a discussion about this film. You have to walk in with some subtext. You have to walk in knowing about it. You have to walk in ready to have the discussion about why is he doing this? And I'm not even trying, like, I don't think it's all that good, but it does add something to the film. By the way, Peter Sellers is amazing in this movie. Besides that role, he played the, you saw it before. He played, let me see here. He played this character here. This guy plays Major Mandrake. And that's Peter Sellers playing that role. That's Peter Sellers playing the role of the president. Of the president here. So you look at all these roles that he's playing. Even when he's playing the German, that's his weakest one. But he's amazing in this film, man. He's cool. He's very cool in this film. I love him in this film. But again, people who come in and watch this and call it kind of goofy, I get it. Because there are certain things in this movie that you can point out today. Even people today who love this movie. Look, y'all got to call out this movie for the problems that it has. I know everybody loves Stanley Kubrick as a great director, but there were some things in this movie that were heavily flawed. One of them being, there's an actor here, Peter Bull. Peter Bull is supposed to play the Russian ambassador, Alexei de Sandesky. But that's a British actor. And at one moment in this movie, he just says, fuck it. He gives up on that. And he turns, Mark, you know what I'm saying? He just says, fuck it. I can't keep up with this accent no more. I'm completely British. People, I want you to listen to this. Tell me if you hear this. There is no fucking hint at a Russian accent at all. Let me know if you hear any vodka in this.
Our doomsday scheme cost us just a small fraction of what we've been spending on defense. We learned that your country was working along similar lines.
That motherfucker's African.
Yeah.
He's not even British. He's African.
Because he sounds a lot like James Earl Jones.
Yeah. He sounds like Black Panther's daddy. We are going to do this along similar lines. That motherfucker sounds like he's from Wakanda. Ain't no fucking British in there at all. None.
You mean no Russian?
I'm sorry. Ain't no British either. Ain't no Russian. Ain't no British. That motherfucker's pure African.
What do you mean, mate? I'm doing my Russian accent. All right. All right.
My other complaint is given some of the things in the movie, such as Peter Sellers and his roles. You know, I'm talking about his role as Dr. Strangelove. I didn't like that. And also his other role as Major Mandrake.
You didn't like Major Mandrake?
I loved Major Mandrake. I loved his comedy, but I don't think the comedy aged well all the way because Major Mandrake, Martin, if you notice, his story had no conclusion. They left it at one point at they left it at one point where it seemed like they were going to come back to it and address it, but they never did. Nothing ever happened with that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it just seemed like other things became more important.
I'm thinking, man, you know, with all the other characters in here, you got one character who his name is the movie, and you hardly see him, and he comes up and all of a sudden all his stuff is near the end. You got this one other character here who we started following in the beginning, and all of a sudden you just leave him, and we don't know what happened with that. It ends on a very lame joke. Like, I wouldn't mind if they had left it with that character. I wouldn't mind if they left it at all and just said, all right, we're done with that. But they left it on a joke. And it wasn't that joke was not that strong. I'll tell you what I did like. Man, this is why I love Martin. This is why I love watching movies from period pieces, especially the 60s, man. The 60s was a very defining period in movie making, because late 50s, 60s, leading up to the 70s, they got into very a stylish form of filmmaking where they weren't always worried about being having a classical look. Right. This movie's very 60s, man. You know, it's I love the filmmaking in this. You know, it goes from iconic to kitsch. The titles to this movie, I think, have a like really great graphic design. It's nothing but, you know, very crudely drawn letters, man. Yeah. But it's very stylized. You know, there was a whole graphic design period in the 60s that still is influential today. And
well, especially with Saul Bass doing so many of those titles.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say. I didn't want to because I didn't want to name any names. I want to seem like I was bringing up people that they didn't know. But Saul Bass is another one, you know. Yeah, man, like Anatomy of a Murder and shit like that. Yeah, you know, 60s had very, very stylized, and you won't find anything outside of that. Like, if you see somebody doing that, you'd be like, fuck it, you ripping off the 60s. You know? Right. Man, there were things in this movie. It's just very nostalgic for me, man. I love things about the filmmaker from that period. Even to the point where, I mean, in the movie, they had like even the special effects in this film. You know, they got this, today people say shitty green screen, but man, I love this. I don't know why. Because you can
that
tell,
model plane with the projection in the background.
Yeah, that plane is obviously on a stick. Yeah. You know? And I mean, look, it's just, you got to realize that's the period that they were making these movies, and that's what it's going to look like. They were doing the best that they could. The funny thing about that is that 4 years later, in 1968, you went from that crude green screen to what was considered some of the most advanced and influential special effects at the time with 2001.
I find them difficult to put out of my mind.
I can guarantee you, no matter how much George Lucas talks about Kurosawa or talks about Flash Gordon and the space sagas from, you know, like the pulp space sagas from back in the day, 2001 was a big influence on him as far as special effects go.
Well, with everybody who did, you know, any kind of space movies, sci-fi or space opera, this is the germ of what started that.
What we think of as sci-fi influencing Star Wars, in 2001, man. That I guarantee you that was it.
It was the first movie that made space feel like a real thing. Yeah. Not just getting in something that was a metal cigar and ending up on Mars in a week.
There's a lot of interesting things in this film. If you want to look at it for just some smaller things that people don't mention all the time. It was kind of cool seeing a very young James Earl Jones in this. He doesn't have too much time in here.
He gets a cool name, though.
What was his name in the movie?
For such a small part he had in here, they gave him a cool name. Lieutenant Lothar Zog. That's his name.
Damn, that motherfucker needs to rule a planet with that name.
Right?
Lieutenant Zog. Yeah, somebody put in the chat. Yeah, man. Before he was Mufasa, he was Lieutenant Zog. You know,
Lothar Zog.
Yeah. And also one thing to recognize with this, if you just want to go in and talk about some of the history of this movie, man, you got to read about this. The guy that played the Russian in the movie, I keep wanting to call him Pitbull. What was his name? Peter Bull. The guy who, there's a crazy.
Yeah, Peter Bull.
Peter Bull wrote an article. Peter Bull is the guy that played that we just got through talking about, that played the Russian. There's a lot of articles about this, but he puts this article out about how it was to shoot this scene in the movie where it was one of the most complicated things to shoot, and they never could use it. The ending of the movie, they were supposed to end it with a pie fight, and go up and look up some of the not scenes, but look for some of the photographs and pictures from this movie, because they're in color, and the pie fight is one of them. And if you look at the movie, there's a table with a buffet set up, and that thing is set up with pies full of shaving cream.
Yeah.
And they destroyed that fucking set with this pie fight at the end. And and there was even a moment where they had to go back and shoot a shot where the before the pie fight, and they're like, "Oh, god damn it." Yeah, it's crazy, man, because they destroyed that set. I'm at people. There's crumbs and shaving cream in every crevice of the set and people. There's shaving cream and crumbs all in people's asses, and they had to go and clean some of this shit up, and had to take stuff to dry cleaners so they could clean all the food and shaving crumb off people. They could shoot that again. The reason why they didn't do it or go through with it, like, it cost probably thousands of dollars to do this. And there was a lot of time and coordination doing it. But Stanley Kubrick, at the time, there was the Kennedy assassination. And he just said he didn't think it would be right to show this at a time where, a president has just been assassinated during a time where there's a high tension too. And yeah, they had to cut it. And if you watch the movie, you'll see what the ending is. The pie fight, honestly, to be... it sounds crazy, but it probably would have been a lot more impactful than what we got. And the movie ends on an impactful note. So I will say this, though. Speaking of destroying that set was amazing. I have a lot of, I love the set design in this. And
the war room?
That war room was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it is. It just stood out, man. That war room, it's a very good lesson in great set direction and set design. Every angle that they took from that war room right there, it was amazing. They built it just for getting great angles. Another thing about looking up movies from the 60s and 70s, man, they didn't care about shooting shit at a different time, sometimes in a different state, maybe in a different country. You could look at scenes and tell, all right, man, that ain't shot in the same place.
Right.
We watched Network, Martin, and they had a scene where there was one dude talking to somebody, and it's like, man, you never see those dudes interact. That shit was shot in a different state. And they do the same thing here, I believe. If that's not the case, it looks like it. There's just some shit in here where it just looks like they didn't care about continuity. It was all about the dramatic effect. There's shit in here where it looks like they didn't shoot that shit in the same time, much less in the same room or the same country or the same city at all.
You are threatening a brother officer with a gun.
Man, that shit, they were not looking at each other. They would not, that is not in the same time.
Come over here and say that to my face.
People in the chat talking about, yeah, I didn't notice it. Look, most people won't notice it because the storytelling is so strong. I notice it, and Martin notices it because we watch so many movies, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the only reason why. But if your storytelling is strong enough, even people who notice it, they're going to be like, I can overlook this because, the story is so great here. Can I say that I loved it? Because I'm just coming off a movie that we saw last week, Network. I loved Network, man, and Network was like, man, that blew me away, and it was very relevant to the time. And this movie is very relevant to this time. But can I say that I loved it? I highly enjoyed this movie, and I can see why. Not because I don't think this movie ages very well to today. I'll be honest with you, I don't. Because Network, the thing with Network, Martin, anybody can drop in a Network at any time and be like, "Fuck, I get this movie," you know.
Yeah.
I think that Dr. Strangelove is a movie that not everybody can drop in easily and understand what's happening, at least why it's so important for today or why it's considered a classic movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I did. This movie is great. It's not a better than sex for me like Network was, though. This is a movie that is a very high full price for me. But the reason why I can't say it worked for me because of the things that I said. The satire does not always work in this. The satire sometimes crosses over to a level of where it's way over the top, and the comedy does not always work for today. So because of how this movie has not aged as well, I can't say that, this movie just blew me away. But I will say that I did leave this movie loving it in the way that I love all these movies that give me something to talk about. I immediately went online and started looking up, what does this mean? What's the conversation about this? I want to talk about this more. This is on my mind. In that context, yeah, it's a great film, man.
We go through different periods. There's certain things you've seen so much that's been borrowed so much that by the time you see the original, it's not funny to you anymore because comedy depends so much on the element of surprise.
Yeah.
Every comedy is going to be at, especially older comedy is going to be at a disadvantage. Now, that being said, I got to say, when this movie started, I thought this was going to be one of the ones where I was like, all right, everybody else loves this movie and I just think it's okay. But the longer it went on, the more I got into it. While, yeah, it's not bordering on a better than sex or anything, I did see it as a low full price.
Yeah, there you go, man. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I can definitely see why. I mean, this movie, it has its place in history. If you don't even see what it is right there, there's a lot you can go back at and look at for this movie for, not only for historical context and politics, but historical context in filmmaking. I'm going to walk away thinking about this movie, and it's going to probably be something that's on my mind for a long time after this. These fucking classic movies, man, they stay on my brain, dude. They got me up at night. I got to stop watching this shit. They got me up at night thinking about it. World's fucked up. You know?